On a warm summer morning in July 1302, the fields near the Flemish town of Courtrai were soaked not with dew, but with the anticipation of battle. Beneath the shadow of a looming medieval order, thousands of common men, peasants, weavers, brewers, and craftsmen gathered with weapons as simple as axes, pikes, and clubs. Arrayed against them stood the most elite fighting force in Europe, the French chivalric knights armored in steel, mounted on powerful war horses, wielding swords that had carved out kingdoms. On that fateful day, the centuries-old social order was about to be shattered, not in grand halls or royal courts, but on a blood-soaked battlefield. The French host was confident, almost contemptuous. Trained from birth for war, these knights believed themselves invincible, ordained by God and King to rule not only over lands, but over the very lives of the peasants before them. Their banners fluttered in the summer breeze, gilded with the sigils of noble houses. Behind them, the thunder of hooves echoed the arrogance of a class that had never tasted true fear. Yet as the sun rose higher, the fate of empires would not be decided by noble lineage, but by the courage and cunning of common men. The Flemish militia, assembled in desperate defense of their freedom, had no illusions of grandeur. They fought not for glory, but for survival. Each man remembered the heavy hand of French occupation, the crushing taxes, the humiliation of serfdom, the endless demands for tribute. In secret, they had trained, perfecting tactics that would exploit the weaknesses of their armored foes. Their greatest weapon was not steel, but unity, discipline, and the resolve to defend their homes at any cost. As the French knights formed into ranks, ready to ride down the rebel militia, the ground beneath them was treacherous, marshy, churned by recent rains, and littered with concealed ditches. The Flemish had prepared the battlefield with ruthless ingenuity, creating a maze of traps that would neutralize the knights' greatest advantage, their horses. The militia formed a dense line, bristling with pikes and the deadly goedendags, a brutal combination of spear and club designed to pierce armor and crush bone. With a blare of trumpets, the first wave of French cavalry charged, expecting the peasants to scatter before their onslaught. But the Flemish did not break. Shoulder to shoulder, they stood like a living wall, bracing for impact. The ground shook as horses thundered forward, but then disaster struck. The mighty destriers stumbled into ditches, fell, and floundered in the mire. The knights who managed to reach the militia found themselves hemmed in, unable to maneuver, their horses impaled by pikes or toppled by the crowd. What happened next shocked even hardened veterans. The peasants, driven by desperation, fought with savage ferocity. The goedendags smashed into armored faces. The pikes found chinks in the steel. Knights, accustomed to dueling opponents of equal status, found themselves dragged from their mounts, trampled, and butchered by hands more familiar with harvest than war. The screams of dying nobility echoed across the field, mingling with the battle cries of men who had never known power until that moment. Wave after wave of French cavalry crashed against the Flemish line, but every charge was repulsed. The discipline of the militia held firm, each man trusting his neighbor, each weapon rising and falling with a rhythm forged in the fields and workshops of Flanders. The nobles, unaccustomed,